Okay, let's get started. So hello everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar on Excel tips and tricks. My name is Anthony Martin and I'll be your host for the next hour. My goal for this session is to show you some tips and tricks for working with a lot of the newer features of Excel 2013, as well as some features that have existed in previous versions that you probably didn't even know existed there or didn't know how to use them. So before we get started here, to give you a heads up, and so you aren't asking yourself, what the heck is this guy doing with the images in his slide deck, I had some fun and ran with the tricks portion of the webinar title and themed the slide deck around magicians, magic tricks, and pretty much anything remotely related to magic. Okay, so about me. So we'll start with the more serious professional left-hand column first, and we'll move on to some of these fun facts on the right. So I'm a consultant and trainer with PragmaticWorks, and I specialize in designing solutions utilizing the Microsoft Business Intelligence Stack. I have several Microsoft certifications, including the Microsoft Certified IT Professional for Business Intelligence for database development and one for database administration as well. I speak at local user groups and have just recently volunteered to help out with the starting of the Buffalo Pass chapter. And on to the fun stuff. So as you can tell, I reside in Buffalo, New York, and I can say that I've jumped out of a second-story window without being forced to, albeit into a giant snowdrift that we had. Some years we do get quite a bit of snow here, but this global warming thing has really been working out pretty well lately. I think the last 2 winters, I think I've only had to break out the snowblower just a handful of times, I think. So my favorite sports teams include the Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres, which leaves me literally sobbing in front of the TV quite frequently. And if you followed any of the football injuries to start this preseason off, it looks like this season will be off to a typical start for my Buffalo Bills, unfortunately. Other than that, I enjoy coaching, and I coach my kids' baseball and soccer teams. And yes, I kind of drink my coffee a little bit unusual, so I like to add in coconut oil and butter. Something called bulletproof coffee that a friend of mine's introduced me to it, and I've been hooked since. So if you're interested, it's actually quite healthy for you too. Maybe you can do a little Google Bing search afterwards to see what it's about. All right, so our agenda for today. So the idea for this webinar topic came from the fact that Microsoft Excel is rather quickly becoming the focal point of the Microsoft BI platform. So over the past few years, there's been numerous releases around the concept of self-service BI, and these products are actually being built right into Excel itself. So be it Power Pivot or Power View, or the recently announced Power BI, which among other things includes Power Query, which was formerly known as Data Explorer, and it is a self-service data integration tool, or Power Map, which is a new visualization tool for geographic data. So due to this, what we want to do is cover some tips and tricks for working with the new and also the existing features of Excel to help you leverage the full power of this exciting application. So we have a pretty packed agenda for today. We're going to cover a lot of things, including apps for Office, the Windows Azure Marketplace, Flash Fill, quick analysis, data validation, Power View, and I'll briefly utilize Power Pivot and Power Query for the demos to bring in some data as well. So this webinar is going to be very short on slides and heavy on demos, so let's get started. Okay, so the first feature I wanted to talk to you about is called Apps for Office, and this is brand new in Office 2013, and what it really is just an app store for Office. There's apps specifically built for Word, Excel, Outlook, Project, PowerPoint, and even SharePoint. So, for example, you could download the Wikipedia app for Word, and you could have it help you create your Word documents by querying Wikipedia without having the need to leave Word itself. Some other use cases are you could use the Excel Bing Maps app to plot your data on a map. So let's jump into our first demo here. I'll show you how to use apps for Office. We'll browse some of the apps that are available for Excel. And then we'll use two of my favorite apps, the Create Time Dimension and the Bing Maps app that I just told you about. So let me open up Excel here. So I am working with Excel 2013 for this webinar. And for Apps for Office, what you do is you go to your Insert tab on the ribbon, and you're going to see this Apps for Office button over here. If you hit the little drop down here, it's going to show you any apps that you have installed, or you can click the top part and it's going to bring you up this this other window here, where you could then manage your apps, which I might need to sign in here. So I click that link, it's going to pop me up into the page that I wasn't actually expecting. Try that again. Access denied. The demo gremlins are already out. Give me a second here, folks. There we go. So I just went to it directly. Typically, you can just click that Apps for Office, click a button, and it will take you right to this page here. And what you have here is really all the apps that are available that people have built and put in the store for Excel. So you can see there's different things you can do, like exchange rate. There's something for a people graph. You got the Bing Maps app. There's some other ones that are, so a lot of them are free. Some of them are a relatively small cost. Typically like your Android app store or your Apple iStore. So you can click on the given app. You can find out more information about it, see what it does, take a look at some of the reviews. A lot of them will have a free trial that you could download them. And that's how that works. So that's the App Store. And let me show you the two that I've already used. So the two that I've already included here are the Bing Maps app, which is nice. So the first thing I need to do is actually get some data to plot. So before we do that, let me show you a quick way to use Power Query. So on the ribbon, I'm going to go over to Power Query. This is an add-in for Excel for 2010 and 2013. And I'm going to click the just online search button. And I already got my thing saved here. So I'm going to search for Little League World Series winners. If any of you followed the Little League World Series, it just recently ended, and it's pretty cool. It's held right in Pennsylvania, and you got 11 and 12-year-olds battling for the title of Little League World Series champions. So,
hey, Anthony.
I'm going to select this data set here. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we're having a couple of the same question. Yeah. Is this specific to Excel 2013, or is this 2010 compatible as well?
So Apps for Office, I believe, is just for Excel 2013. However, Power Query is a specific add-in that you have to get. You can download it right from Microsoft website for 2010 or 2013. Hopefully that resolves that.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so you notice there I did a quick online search, and it gave me Wikipedia results for Little League World Series past champions. I chose the data set I was interested in, and it pulled it right into Excel for me. From there, you can do some additional things like filter and shape your data. So, for instance, there's some columns here that I'm not really interested in. And this actually wasn't the data set I wanted. This should work, though. So, if I'm going to right-click at the top column, I'm going to say Remove. I'm not interested in the score. I'm not really interested in the runner-up or this key that's been assigned to it. And frankly, the year either. What I really want to see is the locations of the past winners plotted on a map. So once I've removed the columns that I didn't need, I can then click this Done button in the bottom right-hand corner. It's going to filter the data set that had pulled in. And now that I've done that, I can go back to my Apps for Office, select my Bing Maps app, that I've previously installed. Give that a second to think. Okay, so now I'm going to select the column of data I'm interested in. So I'm going to select my data values here. And then I'm going to click this little button here, this little point. I'm going to say plot the locations. And it's going to give me a little warning. It's going to say it can't quite map a few of these Tokyo locations. We're just going to close that out. But you can see that you've got a quick way to easily map any data points that you bring in on a map. So you can then do things like zoom in if we're interested in, where are the teams located that have won the Little League World Series in the United States. We can quickly visualize that on a map, and we can see that there's a few hot spots here. It seems like over in the northeast, over by myself here, down in the southeast, over in the Alabama-Georgia region, and then I'd say probably down in the California region. It looks like in the three corners of the country is where the majority of the United States Little League World Series champions are coming from. Okay, so that's our Bing Maps app. Let's take a look at one other one. This one I find really neat. This is called Create Time Dimension. And if you've ever started building a business intelligence application, you'll quickly find out that you need a date table, or sometimes it's referred to as a timetable, in your solution, so that it allows you to, let's say, slice and dice your sales by years and months, and other date or time attributes. So if you don't already have that table in your data set, you can quickly get one using this Create Time Dimension Apps for Office app. So what it does is I clicked it, and it's going to open up this little window on the right-hand side of Excel, and it simply tells me what do I want my start date to be, what do I want the end date to be, what language should we tailor it for, we're going to just choose English, and when the week starts on. So if your week starts on Monday, sometimes you might have it start on a Sunday. We'll just leave the defaults for now. And I'm going to hit Insert Data beginning in current cell. And there you go. You got yourself a date table very quickly that you could then integrate into, you could use it into a Power Pivot model you could integrate it into. You could use then something like SSIS if you wanted to integrate it into a SQL Server database table. But an excellent way to quickly get started with a free and simple date table. All right. Okay, so the next feature I want to show you is the Windows Azure Marketplace. And what this is it's an online market for buying and selling data. So you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with Excel? So the Azure Marketplace allows you to integrate additional data sets that don't normally exist in, let's say, your corporate data warehouse that lets you analyze your data in different ways. So, for example, you could take a look at your sales numbers and analyze them by, say, demographics data or by weather data. Also, if you're just starting out with business intelligence, as I mentioned before, kind of that cornerstone is either a date or a time dimension, and you can also get that from the Azure Marketplace. So let's take a look at this. We'll browse the Azure Marketplace, we'll load some data in, and we'll work on also filtering a feed as well. Okay, so I'm sure the next question is going to be, is this for Excel 2010 or 2013? And the answer is both. The Azure Marketplace isn't actually an Excel feature. It's a service outside of Excel. But you can integrate that data, you can bring it down into Excel in either 2010 or 2013. So the way you do that is you're going to go over to your Data tab on the ribbon, and you're going to select Get External in the Get External Data section from other data sources, and we're going to say from the Windows Azure Marketplace. So now you'd either need a link or a file, or you could click this button here to say Find Data Feed. So that's going to open up a web browser, and it's going to take you to the Windows Azure Marketplace. You'd have to register for this. You can get a free account, which I've already done and signed into here. And then you can see all the different data sets that are available from these different categories here on your left-hand side. So from right here, you can see that I've actually subscribed to two different data sets, the occupational employment statistics for 2011, as well as this date stream feed that I'll show you a little later. But you can see there's other categories out here. There's things on, let's see, science and statistics category. We can see things, geez, look at this, London borough profiles, local authority average rents. Just a lot of interesting things that you can search out here. Business and finance category, let's see what's in there. So we have, geez, they plot UK ATM locations. There's global address verification that you can get from Dun & Bradstreet. You can get data for GDP for per capita by state. All sorts of interesting things that are out here that you could integrate into your data marts. So that's where you'd go. Let's take a look at the two that I have already subscribed to, specifically the DateStream app. There we go. So let's click on one and let's see what it looks like. So I'm going to click this button here, or this link, explore this data set. And what it's going to do is it's going to actually pop up an Excel add-in for the browser, and we're going to see what the actual data looks like. So you can see here the various data sets that are available from the bottom here. So right now I'm on the basic calendar English, and I can see the various columns that are made up in that data set. You can actually click drop downs and see what's in there as well. So that's a basic calendar. There's also ones for different, Italian, Turkish, but also there's time ones as well. And that's why I typically refer to it as a date dimension and not a time dimension, because there's also, you could actually analyze your data by time, by morning, by afternoon, by evening, AM, PM, whatever it is. So I'm interested in just pulling down this basic calendar English. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL here and highlight it and just click Control-C. I'm then going to jump back over to Excel. I'm going to paste that in right here. Then you'll need your account key, which you could get once you're signed in. You could click this Show, which I'm not going to do, and I'm going to quickly go off the screen and try and highlight my code that I've already have here. Okay, so what it's going to do, it's going to reach out. It's going to say, which table do you want? I selected Basic Calendar English. I'm going to hit Next. We'll hit Finish. And then I have options on what I want to do with that data set. Do I want to just put it in a table? Do I want to put it into a report, a pivot table report, or a chart? I just want the raw data. So I'm going to put it into a table, and I'm going to click OK. And you can see it down here retrieving the data. So it's already pulled in 9,000 records, and it's pulling them in pretty quickly. Shouldn't take more than another second or two. And perhaps I should have showed you the filter functionality before I pulled that whole thing in. Let me pull up my cheat sheet for filtering. Okay, so I think this data set goes from like the year it's one row per day, and it goes from 1900 to like 2050, I believe. Oh, there's the data. So there we go. We pulled in, how many records did we get here? So we got 73,000 records in, I don't know, less than a minute, I believe. And we have a simple date dimension in our model that we could then, again, pull into Power Pivot, or use SSIS, pull it into a SQL Server table to use in our analysis. So one thing you'll see when you're working with Power Pivot, if you ever use a slicer on a year, you want to restrict your date dimension so that it doesn't include a bunch of values that you're not going to use. So you can see here we have data all the way from 1900 down to 2100. So if you wanted to restrict that, the way you would do it is, again, go to Data. We're going to go back to our Windows Azure Marketplace. I'm going to copy that feed one more time. and we're going to add some things to the end of it. So this is, if you're used to working with OData feeds, it has full support for OData querying and filtering. And the syntax is you add this question mark, $, and you tell you want it to filter. And what I'm saying is I want to filter it on the year key. The %20 is just a space once it gets encoded into a URL string. Then I'm going to say GT for greater than. I got another space here with this %20, and I'm going to say greater than 2010. So if you did this, if you added it in, it would only bring in years where the year key is greater than 2010. That's how you would do that, and then you just go through the same steps that I just showed you. So cancel out of that, but that's how you would filter if you want to filter your Windows Azure Marketplace feed. Okay. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is flash fill. Now this is a pretty cool feature, and unfortunately it's just for Excel 2013. So if you're not on Excel 2013, this is a nice reason that you might want to jump on over to make the switch. So what it does is it saves you, even the experienced Excel formula developer, time by automatically detecting patterns for what you're trying to accomplish, and then it auto-completes it for you for the entire column that you're working with. So you can use it for things like string manipulation, formatting, and as I'll show you in the next the next demo, another additional way to create another simple date dimension. So let's jump into that. Okay, so here I am in Excel, and I got this table here defined with just a few sample values. So I have first and last names split out into two separate columns. And you can see we got some of the Pragmatic Works employees located here. So Brian Knight, Devin, Mike Davis, Anthony, myself here. And what I want to do here is, well, I have these other columns that I want to fill out with flash fill. So say, for instance, I wanted to get the full name of the person listed here. Typically, you'd have to write, some sort of concat Excel formula. But with flash fill, what you can do is you can just start typing. I'm going to type in Brian Knight. I'm going to go down to the next line. I'm going to type in Devin, and you're going to notice it in the shaded area, flash fill is automatically picking up on what I'm trying to accomplish. So to auto-complete that, you just hit Enter, and it automatically filled and auto-completed the rest of the values in the table for me. So there's a few ways you can do it. Sometimes it'll automatically pick up, but the other ways that you can get to it, if you're on the Data tab, there's a flash fill. And also, I think if you're on the Home tab, there's this fill button, and you can hit flash fill from here. And additionally, you can also do Control E. So let's go over an additional example. So let's say I want to get the last name, comma, first name. So to do that, start typing, go down to the next row, and I could actually hit just Control E now, or if I go over to Data, I hit flash fill, it should be able to pick up on the pattern that I just typed in from just one simple example. So I'm going to click flash fill, and it automatically picked it up correctly. So it filled it out correctly for the rest of the rows of the table. One more example, let's go over first name, then last name, first letter. So let's see, Brian, K. We'll hit Enter. We'll do Devin K, and it automatically picked it up. I'm just going to hit Enter here. And again, it picked up the pattern that I was trying to apply. No need to write a formula, and flash fill automatically handled that for me. All right, let's go one other example here. Let's do an email address. So the format of our emails are first initial, last name at pragmaticworks.com. I'll hit Enter. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hit flash fill, and you'll notice it didn't quite understand from just one example what I was trying to do there. See, it took just the letter B, it took it as a literal, but it took their last name and it followed the pattern at the company.com. So let's give it one more example to work with. I'll go dknight at pragmaticworks.com. I'll hit Enter, and now on this third line I'll hit flash fill, and now we'll see that it successfully picked up that pattern that I was trying to do. It took the first initial, all the way over here in my first name, added in the last name, and concatenated it with @pragmaticworks.com. So there you go. There's a simple way to do string concatenation and manipulation with flash fill. All right, so let's go through one more flash fill example with dates, and I'm kind of beating this example to death here, but let's go through one more example to create a date dimension for you. So I've simply typed in a given date value, August 27th, 2013. And then you can click on, if you have the cell highlighted, you can click this little button down here. And I'm going to drag it down, let's say 30 rows or so. And let's see if we can use flash fill to build out the rest of the columns in our date dimension. So for year, I'm simply going to type 2013. Do it one more time. Then I'm going to hit Control E instead of hitting the flash fill up here. And you can see now I got my year populated. Let's try the month number. So we'll go 08. And I think I actually have to get down to the 9, so it has one other example to work with. I'll hit Control E, and it automatically filled it out. And then the last guy, let's do date number here. So 27, 28. I'm going to hit Control E one more time, and now I have my day number column. So now month name. Let's see if we can actually get the name of the month. How would we do that? So does it interpret 8 as being August? Is it that smart? I don't think it is. It isn't. So see, you got down here into September, and it didn't quite pick it up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete out that column, but I got another trick to make that work for you. So if you highlight your date column, we're going to format this cell. We're going to choose the date category. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to be this day name, month name, day number, year number syntax or format instead. I'm going to click OK. Expand that, and now I should be able to get my month name. So I can just say August. August, we'll do Control E, and there we go. So I got my months all filled out, September correctly this time. Now how about the day name? One last try. So we can get Tuesday now. Hit Control E, and you can see it picks up your day name. So there you go. There's a third example if you can use flash fill to create yourself a simple date dimension. All right, let's continue. Okay, quick analysis. This is another really cool new feature. Unfortunately, it's just for Excel 2013 as well. But if you're like me and you often get lost trying to find out which tab or ribbon in Excel all the data analysis features exist on, like conditional formatting, spark lines, and your various chart and table options where they exist, this quick analysis feature has a really nice interface. And it allows you to test out these different formatting options. So you can test out the options in a lot of cases before you actually apply them. And you can quickly turn a basic data table into charts or add conditional formatting to highlight data that would otherwise be difficult for the eye to understand the meaning of. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so in order to get some data to work with, I'm once again going to go to Power Query. I'm going to do an online search, and I'm going to keep what I had before, so the Little League World Series winners. This time, let's use this data set here. So it's going to give me the championships won by country and state, and the amount of championships they won. So I'm going to select that. It's going to pull it in. I'm going to just shape this a little bit by removing some columns that we don't quite need. So I'm not interested in this key that it brought in. I'm not interested in the last year the country won. I just strictly want the country and the number of championships. So I'm going to hit Done. It'll modify it. So then to get to quick analysis, all you do is you highlight the data that you're interested in analyzing. And you'll notice this little icon showed up here down at the bottom right-hand corner, which is your quick analysis icon. I'm just going to click this, and you'll see my various options. So it's broken down into a few different categories. So I have formatting, charts, totals, tables, and spark lines. So for formatting, I can simply add data bars to make it easier to see by the eye, just from a quick glance, to see which country truly has won the most championships. And you can see that Taiwan and Japan are really kicking our butts here. So we'll highlight that again. I'll get my quick analysis back. I can clear the formats, and you could do things like icon sets. It doesn't really make sense in this scenario, but you can get the gist of what it's doing. So what it did was it took the highest number, gave that a green arrow. The two guys in the middle, it gave them a yellow arrow pointing to the right, and everything else it decided was bad, or a red arrow going down. We'll clear that out. Some other things you could do, let's see, you could turn this into a chart. So we could simply say that we want this to be a clustered column. And then you can click this, you can see in the chart, you got this chart elements, so we could do different things like add in data labels to get the actual numbers. We could show the legend, trend line, anything like that. But we could also then go into the styles. So if we want to play with the styles here, and it's jumping around on me, it looks like it's had a bit too much coffee here. We'll give it a second to populate. All right, so you can see the various options that it highlighted out for me. So we can select one that we like. We can then go over to the color tab and start playing with our color choices here to kind of change the look and feel of it real quickly. So there you go. So we were able to use quick analysis to pull in. We did some data bars. I showed you how to create a chart there. You could also do things like it'll add totals for you. So if I add, let's say, sum, it's going to add my sum down there. And then sparklines. If your data set lended itself to it, you could add sparklines over to the right. This data set doesn't, but I think you get the gist. So quick analysis, it gives you a quick way to analyze a given data table and add in various formatting charts, totals, and other data visualization options that can sometimes be buried here in the ribbon. So there you go. There's quick analysis. All right, data validation. So this is one that does exist in 2010 and 2013. And what data validation allows you to do is to control the data or values that the user enters. So one thing the database developers hate about using Excel as a data source is that it is relatively unstructured, in that you could have text cells when you're expecting numbers or values that fall outside of a expected list of valid values that you were anticipating. So using data validation, you can add rules so that the user that's entering the data follows the defined rules that you want to implement. So let's take a look at how that works. Okay, so my demo here, this is actually kind of neat. So I actually just recently used this for the Little League baseball team that I coach. So what I did was, previously I was creating my positional lineups for the players. So you got my players on the team here. Then I had, in Little League we play 6 innings, but I was running into the situation where I was assigning more than one player to the same position in an inning. And it actually kind of gets quite funny or frustrating depending what side you're in, when you have 2 7-year-olds that run out and they both want to be the pitcher, and you made a mistake and you have to tell one of them, no, sorry buddy, you can't be pitcher this inning, I messed up, you have to be left field. So I tried to figure out a way in Excel that I could handle that, and data validation is the answer. So let's show you some of the data validation rules you can do. So let's just get rid of this. So I have this other table here that's my players. You could do a simple data validation that would be from a list of values. So I'm going to click this cell here. Actually, click all the cells. I'll go over to the Data tab. I'll select Data Validation, and then you'll get this interface. So for the settings, what I'm going to do is, under Allow, instead of any value, I'm going to change it to a list. And then it's going to ask me, well, what's the source of your list? So I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to select my list of players here. I'm going to hit Enter. And then I can define an input message when the cell's selected. For this, we'll say, I don't know, choose player, and choose player from list. And then we'll do a little error. We'll say invalid player, and choose player on your team dummy. So we'll click OK. Now you'll see whenever I click in a cell, it's going to give me, it's going to tell me to choose the player and choose a player from the list, that informational message that I had supplied, and I get a drop down to select my players. If I were to type in someone that didn't exist on the team, like Anthony, it's then going to show me that error message that I put in there. So I'll hit cancel. So there's a simple way to validate data based on a list. I'm just going to copy these guys over. But how do I handle the scenario where I want to make sure that in a given inning there's a distinct list of positions? So to handle that, what I'm going to do is we'll go over to data validation. Instead of any value or list, I'm going to choose this custom. And what I'm going to say is, let me see if I can get my cheat sheet out here. There we go. Okay. So what this formula says is count if. So the first parameter is going to be this range of values. So it's going to look at from B2 all the way down to B12. And the second parameter is B2. So if it finds the value in B2 that exists in this range, count it up. And if it equals 1, then we're good. If not, it's going to be an issue. So for my error alert, I'm going to say stop. We'll say duplicate player, and choose different position or something like that. And we'll click OK. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put it into every other cell in my table, as well as in the same column. So what you're then going to see, so if I go down to another cell where I didn't define that, and click on data validation, you'll see that if I go to the settings, it automatically changed that. So it's still looking at from B2 to B12, but now the second parameter is B4 instead of B2 where it was here. So I'll pick that up, and then similarly in the separate column, you'll see the setting then correctly went over to C2 to C12 and looking at C3. So let's see it in action. Let's test it out. So we'll say Andrew goes to first base, Austin over at second, Calvin's going to go to third, Carson's going to be my pitcher, but then I'll incorrectly also put Dylan as my pitcher, and I'll see my error. So retry, choose a different position. So that worked correctly. So now I can say, sorry, Carson's catching, or Dylan's catching, and so on and so forth. So simple way to use data validation to check first. The first thing we saw was to make sure all my players were in a list, and then also to do a more advanced formula to make sure that there was a unique list of values in a given range of cells. Okay, let's see what's next. All right, on to Power View. So Power View is an easy-to-use data visualization tool that gives you a lot more options and features than traditional pivot tables and pivot charts. It's built right into Excel 2013, and it's also available if you have access to SharePoint Server 2010 or SharePoint Server 2013. So you can build Power View reports off of just Excel tables or from Power Pivot models. And let's take a look at Power View. All right. So I'm going to open up a new Excel workbook. And the first thing I need to do is get some data that I'm going to work with. So what I'm going to do is give you a little sneak peek at what Power Pivot can do for you. So I'm going to go over to the Power Pivot ribbon. And Power Pivot itself, so this is available for both 2010 and 2013. I'm going to click my Manage button. And I'm going to bring some data in from a SQL Server database. I'm going to select my server name. We'll select the database name. I'm going to click Next. Then I get some options here. Do I want to select from a list of tables that are in the database, or do I want to write a query? I'm going to go with the option just to select the list. All right, so here I can see a list of all the tables and views that exist in the database that I selected. For this, let's take a look at, we're going to be doing the Common Adventure Works database, so we're just going to look at sales, and then we're going to analyze that by a couple other dimensions. So we'll need a date dimension. We'll take a look at some of the product dimensions. We'll look at sales territories. And then we'll use reseller sales. So what you can do then is also define kind of friendly names. So instead of, kind of these IT guys like to, prefix tables with dim or fact to classify what type of table it is, like a data table or a lookup table versus, your actual transactional data tables. So we're just going to clear that out by changing the friendly name. So when it gets imported into the model, we have a nice, more business appropriate name instead of the technical name. So let me just quickly go through that. We'll add in a space for product category and subcategory. I'll add one in for my sales territory. We'll change this name for my fact reseller sales. All right, and at that time, if we wanted, we can do some other things. You can preview and filter what if you weren't too familiar with what the data set or database was, you can preview and filter any of the tables, and it'll pop it up and give you a view like this. From here, then, you could optionally select and deselect any columns that you didn't want to bring in. We're just going to leave the default, but just wanted to show you how that works. And I'm just going to hit Finish now. And what it's going to do, it's going to reach out to my data source, and it's going to pull in the data for these tables, and it's going to build it into my Power Pivot model. And what that's going to allow us to do is then build some Power View reports on top of it. So that completed successfully. I'm going to close that out. And you can see here in Power Pivot, it's given me a separate tab or sheet at the bottom for all the tables that it brought in. So what you have then is tables and then rows and columns. And that makes up your data model. So then you can also click this button down here and get you a diagram view. And this gives us a nice graphical representation of the tables in the model and any relationships that exist between them. So because I pulled in from a SQL Server database that already had primary foreign key relationships defined, Power Pivot was smart enough to also create those relationships for me. Now what these relationships allow you to do is that you don't need to have all the data in a single flat list. So you don't have to work on getting your data together by using VLOOKUPs and things like that to get it all into a single list. You can have them in separate tables and then use the relationships defined between the tables to slice and dice or filter the data by that. So now that we got the data in our model, let's try and build our first Power View report. So to do that, I'm going to go back to Excel. I'm going to go over to the Insert ribbon button, and I'm going to select Power View. It's going to think for a second. And when it comes up, what you're going to see is you have this large window here, which is going to be our designer interface, as well as the field list in this right-hand side. So the field list is simply all the tables that we pulled into our Power Pivot model, or any Excel tables that you had. And you can expand them, and within the tables you'll see all the columns that are available within the table. Another thing you'll notice is that there's these various summation sign to distinguish between columns that have numerical values in them versus string values. And the first thing I'm going to see here is we're going to need to go and change our Power Pivot model just slightly, because if I wanted to analyze my data by years, for instance, it thinks it's actually a number instead of a textual value. So if I click it, it's going to pull it into a data table, and what we're going to see here is it just summed up all the years so that year value for every single row, it just summed it up and spit out that number to us. So that's not what we wanted to do, so I'm going to jump back to my Power Pivot model and just make a simple tweak here. I'm going to go back to the grid view. I'm going to go to my date table. I'm going to slide over to my calendar year, and I'm going to change the data type from whole number for it to text. And the same thing with my calendar quarter. Let's change that over to text as well. So what you'll see now is when we pop back over to our Power View report, we're going to get this little warning that the data model's changed. Not a big deal, just click OK. So it actually recognized already that we changed the data types. And now you'll notice when we expand it, it'll have the summation sign will be gone by calendar year and quarter. So let's build a simple little report here. So let's say that we want to analyze our reseller sales. We're going to look at, let's say, sales amount. And we want to take a look at that by country. So we're going to look at our sales territory table and select the country column. And now you can see it quickly created a nice little data table for us. But what if we wanted to change that visualization and we wanted something other than just a grid of data? So up here, if you're on the design ribbon, you can go over to switch visualization, and let's say we want to make this a stacked bar chart. It's going to think for a second, and it's going to give us our result. And then we can also resize our reports by dragging and dropping. And also, if you hover over it and you get this little pointer guy, you can move them around if you wanted. So there we go. Now we got a simple sales by country. We're going to click over anywhere else in the canvas, and then if we select any other fields from the field list, it's going to give us a new report. So let's also try looking at, again, our sales amount. But this time, let's take a look at it by, how about the product color? So we'll choose that. Again, we're going to change the visualization from a data table to, we'll do a vertical stack column chart this time. And I'll expand it. So you can see. So now what's really cool is we have built-in filtering between these various elements in our report. So if I click on United States, what you're going to see is the values in this data grid is going to change. So I'm going to select United States, and you'll see the blue highlighted values is going to represent just the values for United States. And similarly for Canada, it's going to also filter that way. Pretty neat. Typically that if you want to develop something like that in, let's say, reporting services or some other data visualization tool, it's going to be a little more effort than simply having it done automatically for you. So another thing we could do is let's add a slicer to this. So let's say we were only interested in looking at a specific year. I clicked in another section. I selected my year. And what I'm going to do then is click this little slicer guy up here. And now we have another way to change both of these report elements based on this given slicer. So if I only wanted to look at sales for the year 2011, I could do that, and the reports will be automatically updated to reflect that. If you want to clear it, you just click this little clear guy, and you're back to the original. So let's do one other additional one, everyone's favorite, which is this animated scatter chart. Let's see if we can do that. So again, this a scatter chart is really good if you want to look at more than one metric at the same time. So here we'll take a look at sales amount and the discount amount and see if we can see any relationship between them. So I got my guy here. I'm going to change the chart type. So I'm going to go to Other Chart. I'm going to select Scatter. We're going to expand this. So you'll see what it did was on the x-axis it added the sales amount down here. On our y-axis we got the discount amount. And then let's analyze that by, let's see. Let's do one other thing. Let's add one additional slicer for the product category. So now let's say we're only interested in bikes. And then back over here, let's go to our product subcategory, and I'm going to throw that guy on our color. So there we go. So you can see our blue circle is going to represent mountain bikes, our red is going to be road bikes, and yellow way up here is our touring bikes. So the next thing we can do is we can add in, let's do our calendar year. We're going to throw this on the play axis, and what you're going to see is something pretty neat. So now we can see an animated view by clicking this button here of our sales and discount amounts based on our product subcategories over years. So I'm just going to click play, and we're going to see our bubbles move around. Kind of neat. So if we wanted to, if we were, say, we're really interested in mountain bikes, I can then click on mountain bikes. And you also see that when I clicked on mountain bikes, notice also that these elements reflected that as well. But you can see the path of it over time. So if we drag and drop the slider, we can specifically see where mountain bikes traveled over time. So you can see that when there was a very low discount amount, our sales were relatively low. As our discount amount increased, our sales went up. We dropped the discount amount, sales went down, and then sales suddenly dropped way over here, and I think that's just because we got an incomplete year of data. But I think you get the idea. So this is PowerView, and kind of a nice data visualization tool to kind of expand your visualization options outside of pivot tables and pivot charts.